I'm very excited to be talking to John Lee Dumas from Entrepreneur on Fire, who's also created a fantastic freedom journal to help people reach their goals in 100 days. But one of the coolest things about John is that he knows firsthand more stories of failure than anybody I know. John, you've interviewed like hundreds, maybe 1,000 people who tell you their stories of failure, but they always have like a comeback story. So tell me, what's the difference between people who overcome failure and those who just succumb to failure?
It's a great question, Douglas. And I'm now actually at episode 1400 of Entrepreneur on Fire. So I haven't changed the format in all 1,400 episodes. And you're so right about that question that I ask every single episode. So now over 1,400 times, I've asked my guests point blank, you included, Douglas. I said, what is your worst entrepreneurial moment ever? And I just make them tell that story. And some people, Douglas, they try to get vague. They try to just be like, oh yeah, like I had a couple bad, I'm like, I don't want a couple bad years. Right. I want the moment in time. Like, was it raining out? Did you cry? Like, what happened? And I make them tell that story because I think it's so important to see that successful entrepreneurs have been massive failures, have just fallen on their face, have just completely bombed in every way, shape, and form. But the one thing that they did do was they didn't stop. They did not stop. They just kept on persevering through those tough times, through those struggles, through those obstacles. And that's actually one thing that I see to kind of really answer your question directly is successful entrepreneurs, they're not even actually always looking for the yes, or they're not always looking for the success. A lot of them are looking for the no. And what I mean by that is they know absolutely that they're going to get 9 no's to get to 1 yes. So when they get a no, they're like, okay, sweet, thanks, bye. And the person's like, well, why is that person so happy that they just said no? Well, because you're one of the 9 no's that I have to experience if I'm going to get to a yes. So thank you for being one of those. And you just realize that you're not going to hit a home run every time. You know, when a baseball player gets 3 hits and 7 strikeouts out of 10 at bats, they're an all-star. Okay? They're an all-star. They might even go to the Hall of Fame with those numbers. That's insanity. And that's the life of an entrepreneur. You only need a couple hits out of every dozen or so swings you take to be a success in life. And entrepreneurs who have achieved success, they know that.
So I want to look at that also from an investment standpoint, because the same principle applies. People are trying and they fail and they fail and they fail. But the people that, get themselves back up, and when in 2009, when the stock market was crashing and really hitting the bottom, someone asked Warren Buffett, because they were kind of a little bit snarky. They said, "So, Mr. Buffett, how does it feel to have just lost 40% of the wealth you've accumulated over your whole life?" And Buffett said, he goes, "Well, it actually feels very much like the previous 3 times that I lost 40% of my net worth." But how do you get that attitude? And again, I want you to draw from, you've spoken to people who really failed and they turn themselves around. And, that's what we tell investors. You got to stick with it, but it's not easy.
Well, number one, it probably helps when you lose 40% of your net worth and you're still a multi-billionaire. Like, that probably helps a little bit.
Right.
But I mean, this is the thing, is that how I finish every one of those stories that my guests share when it comes to their worst entrepreneurial moment, I then say, okay, now let's dive into the lessons learned. Let's talk about what you learned from that. And then they kind of perk up a little bit, because of course it's tough to talk about the worst moments, because, I'm physically bringing them there. Like, I'm just dragging them through that mud all over again. And I'll get a lot of them that will start off by saying, John, like, I'm kind of getting shivers and chills right now because, this really gives me anxiety to think about, because it was such a tough, sad, incredibly difficult time in my life. But then when we get to like, what were the lessons learned, they perk up and they just have these incredible lessons learned. And that's where, I think Warren Buffett, when he has lost it and then gained it back again, all those times, like every time he's learned an incredibly valuable lesson. And I'm sure one of them was, like, don't panic. Like, don't just, when you're down 40%, it doesn't mean you sell everything. No, maybe you double down in some of those areas where that the company is still strong and they will be coming back, but the general market is just panicking. And of course, you probably know these quotes better than I do, but like Warren Buffett loves saying, he likes to be greedy when other people are panicking, and he is more panicking when people are greedy. Like, he's really trying to go against that tide. So what are you as an entrepreneur learning from those tough times, and how are you going to apply it to that next time you face that struggle, that obstacle, that challenge? And that's the mark of a long-term successful entrepreneur.
Right. I think if you're a lifetime learner, that's important. And the critical thing really is also to start young. I remember when I started on Wall Street, I was actually partners with my mother. My mother was a vice president, and I was like this young rookie, and I was 20-something years old, and I thought I'm really good at math, and I started trading options for myself because it's like all mathematical. And I made money. Like in the first week, I made a couple of $1,000s. And I thought I was all smart. And needless to say, of course, the next week I just got crushed and lost that and way more. And my mother started laughing at me. And like, your mother shouldn't laugh at you. And I said, why are you laughing? She goes, it's a good thing you lost the money now so that when one day I leave you an inheritance, you don't lose all of it then. So I learned a lesson. And I think from what you're telling me, just correct me if I'm wrong, the takeaway from this question is people who deal with failure and come around to succeed are the people who try to learn the life lesson and just move on.
100%. 100.
All right, so let's go to the next question. We're talking with John Lee Dumas from Entrepreneur on Fire, a fantastic podcast, one that I've not only listened to, I can't say all 1,400 episodes, but many, many episodes. And I've had the honor of being on it. And my co-author, Susan Polgar, was also a guest. And she's the chess grandmaster and has said exactly what you've said to me, but she just uses a chess metaphor, which is,
of course,
you got to go back and do a post-mortem and look at your games. One of the other issues, which I think is also very parallel between entrepreneurs and investors, is there's a lot of stress involved, and especially when you're dealing with a couple. And a lot of the people that you talk to, and yourself included, work at home, and they're very, they're related, they're very close to their house. And we often praise that and say, oh yeah, it's great. You're with your spouse, you're with your kids, but you're also in very tight quarters, and the stress can be huge. And as a financial advisor, I often work with couples, and I see the stress. They come into my office and they don't beat each other up, but they're definitely dealing with that. In the 1,400 conversations you've had, what do you find is a trait that makes people able to deal with that success without killing each other?
Well, one of the things that really helps make a successful partnership, so to speak, both in business and in the home, is that you have strengths where your other partner has some weaknesses, and then vice versa, that your partner has those strengths where you have weaknesses. And for me, I've just found over and over again, like there's just certain things that I am really good at. And I want to spend my time amplifying that strength and those things that I'm good at, because nobody wants people that are okay at something. Like, why would I spend a ton of time at stuff that I'm crappy at to become okay at it? Because even if I become okay at it, it's still been a waste of time, because this world doesn't want okay. It wants great. And so for me, I'm able to spend my time at what I'm really good at to amplify that. And I'm able to have my partner step up, at what she's really good at and focus on that and amplify her strengths. Likewise, our weaknesses are offset by that. So really making sure that you are being strategic about that you don't just have a business where it's just the two of you and you're both uber type A, you're both totally take charge, you both totally hate details and all that stuff. Like, then you're setting yourself up for failure unless you're willing right off the bat to bring in somebody on a team. Maybe you're going to hire, like a full-time CPA, or hire, a full-time financial advisor that's going to be like there with you, making sure you're doing all those right things to run a well-rounded business. And plus, I think a really important thing, Douglas, that people have to realize is, there has to be an on-off switch. Like, if you are working with a partner and you're friends with them, or it happens to be your significant other, that can't be lost. Like, there has to be a time where, if it's your buddy, you're shutting things down at a certain time, you're going out for a beer and you're keeping that friendship alive. Or if it's your significant other, you're shutting it down, you're sitting down to a nice dinner together and you're talking about non-business related stuff, because otherwise then it just becomes just like one long, endless marathon slog. And you lose what's most important, which is that special person in your life. So those are a couple really key things that I've seen over the 1,400 episodes.
So what if you are not actually partners? What if, the example that I'll often see a lot is one of the spouses handles the investment portfolio. The same way one of them might be the entrepreneur, but the other one has, a real job. And, and all of a sudden you're going for a big deal, and, you lose $100,000, or you invest in a stock and it goes bad. And then that's when it all hell breaks loose, because the other person's not even involved in your business. And in most, I don't know, I'm not sure the percentages for you, but certainly a lot of cases, the husband does his thing, the wife does her thing.
Yeah, totally.
And all of a sudden, but they share the common bank account, which can take a huge hit. How do they deal with that in order not to in order to stay married, even if because when the money's so volatile?
Yeah, the ones who I've seen who have achieved success, even when they're leading completely separate professional lives, are those that keep the communication going all the time. So leading up to any big move or big acquisition or big risk or whatever it might be, the conversation's been happening in the days, the weeks, the months preceding that. So if it goes great, it's not like out of the blue, and if things go horrible, that's not out of the blue either. So keeping them involved and then you likewise being involved in what they're doing, because it has to be that two-way street. So just always keeping that communication going and including them in. I mean, all of us want to sweep our mistakes under the rug, and we want to just shout our successes from the rafters, but we have to realize that if we are gonna share our successes, we also have to share our failures and our tough times. And it shouldn't be coming as a surprise. It should be a complete communication that both of you are on board with going forward. Otherwise, you're in for a rocky road.
Yeah, I think that's critical, especially in a family. We'll often talk about budgeting, and it applies to whether you're in business or just managing your own money. The two of you have to sit down together, on a monthly basis, look where you're spending, what you're earning, because if you're going to have a bad month and you're not going to be able to pay for the groceries, you're going to have to go to your in-laws to borrow some money. Boy, you really want your spouse to know that up front.
Yeah.
That can be scary. So then you sort of go to the question of getting professional help. I'm not talking about now marriage help. I'm just talking about, let's say, in business. And again, I think there's a great parallel between investors and entrepreneurs. You yourself talk a great deal about coaching and getting coaches, but it's expensive for a lot of people. In the same way, I talk to people about going to a financial advisor, and there are costs involved in that too. And in the same way, an entrepreneur says to you, yeah, I'll read a book about it and I'll be okay. Same way people come to me and say, Doug, I'll just buy, I'll go trade in a discount brokerage firm and I'll be okay. How should a person know when it's good to spend money to build himself up or to save the money for reinvesting in his own business?
I like to say penny wise, pound foolish. I think that is a really true term in pretty much everything that you're doing. I mean, as soon as Entrepreneur on Fire started generating revenue, the first thing I did was say, hey, I got to get my taxes in order because I'm bringing in a lot of money. I'm an entrepreneur. I know I have quarterly taxes that are due here in America. It's one of the things you have to do. And I want to make sure that all my I's are dotted and all my T's are crossed. And this is not my strong suit because I'm working on producing content for entrepreneurs, for EO Fire, writing emails, doing social media, all this stuff. So I went out and I just found the best gosh darn CPA that I could find. I was just like, this person gets entrepreneurs, he gets business. I'm bringing him on the team. That investment, has paid so many dividends, that's, if I would have just tried to, just do TurboTax is something we have in the States here.
Sure.
At the end of every year, I would have found that, oh my goodness, I haven't been keeping up my business expenses. I've been commingling funds. I haven't been, taking out the right deductions. The list goes on, and it would have been a mess, a nightmare, and would have just so taken me away distraction wise from the business as well. But bringing on a CPA that knew what he was doing and that was able to get my house in order the day, basically the month that I started generating positive revenue, I had my I's dotted and my T's crossed, has saved me so much money. So trying to go the cheap route, trying to be penny wise at first can really bite you big in the end. Just like if you have some disposable income and you want to invest it and you just, again, don't get help for people that understand or who are willing to take the time to understand the situation that you're in, the goals, the aspirations that you have financially, and then you put it all into a stock or whatever it might be that doesn't line up with your risk profile. And the next thing you know, you wake up and that stock's gone down 40%. You're just like, what happened? Well, I mean, was it really worth going, with a discounted brokerage or somebody that doesn't know who you are or what you're looking for? Of course not, because maybe your son or daughter is going to college next year and you have to have a certain amount of money set aside, no matter what happens to the market. That's critical stuff to know. And it's not going to be able to you're not going to be able to do it because it's not your strong suit. So give it to somebody who knows what they're doing.
Yeah, I like what you're saying. John, I like how you're pointing out that as soon as you started making money, you decided, I'm not going to handle my money like a politician. I'm going to get real professionals to handle it for me.
Oh, you have corrupt politicians in Israel too? I thought it was just America.
Oh, no. I was just using that as a metaphor. I don't really know. Listen, I think the main point is there's really two sides to this. One of them is whether you're an investor or an entrepreneur, you got to figure out what value you add to the equation. What are you good at? And do that. And everything else you should outsource. And it's funny, even though I'm a financial advisor, and people always they say, oh, what, you're not an accountant? Even though I kind of look like one. I say, no, I don't do taxes, right? I have a bookkeeper and I'm an accountant just like you. And you have to figure out what value do you bring to the company? What's it worth, literally, in how many dollars per hour? And if you can hire someone for less, you should absolutely be doing that. And I think in the end, you'll also just be happier because you do what you like, and you're not, and you're not trying to be everything. Because if your goal is to be teaching people and writing content like you do, well, that's what you should be doing. Someone else should be doing everything else, which I think.
Well, I'll give you a real example that just actually happened a couple of days ago. My father, he's a great guy, very successful lawyer, and but he's still kind of from the old school. He's from Maine, like pinch every single penny, and he's out there mowing the lawns, and he was just like, John, like, I see you got a pretty big lawn down there in Puerto Rico. Like, that must take you a long time. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I'm like, I have a lawn guy that comes every Friday and he does all of my lawns. And I have a maid that comes and does all of my dishes. Like, I'm not lying. Like, I have them do it. He's like, oh, you should really do that yourself. You would save like what? Like $40-$50 a week? And I'm like, are you saying that like my time going out and mowing the lawn for 4 hours to save $40, but taking 4 hours of my time, not to mention the energy and the bandwidth and all that stuff. I'm like, I made a couple $100,000 last month. Like, my time, my hourly time is much higher than $10 per hour, believe me. So I am so much better served doing my thing, producing content, doing podcasts like this.
And he doesn't get it, though. He doesn't get it. What you do, does he? He's like,
he doesn't get it.
You're spoiled. He just doesn't see it.
Yeah, totally. He's like, kids these days. I'm like, all right.
No, it's not real work what you do, right? Because you don't go to a boss who pays you a weekly paycheck. Hey, John, listen, we're out of time here, but tell me in the last few seconds what you're up to and how people can follow you and follow your work.
Well, the thing I'm most passionate about is, I get the question all the time, like, John, what do these entrepreneurs that you interview now, over 1,400, have in common? And the one commonality they all share is they know how to accomplish goals. And so many people that don't find success don't know how to accomplish goals. And so that was kind of my biggest passion project as of late. That's where I'm really pouring all of my current time and energy into. And we've created this amazing hardcover gold embossed journal called the Freedom Journal, which guides you in accomplishing your number one goal in 100 days. We're super passionate about it. We've sold over 14,000 to date. Wow. And it's just been a huge excitement for me to see people actually now crushing their goals. And if you want to check out more about goals, head over to thefreedomjournal.com.
Okay, we'll put a link to that at the show notes of today's show. John Lee Dumas, a real pleasure talking.
Ditto.
You've been listening to the Goldstein on Gelt Show with money maven Doug Goldstein. Doug's weekly radio show is heard around the world, but if you miss it, you can download the podcast at www.goldsteinongelt.com. The Goldstein on Gelt Show gives you up-to-date financial ideas so you can get on the path to financial freedom. If you'd like your questions answered on the air or off, send Doug an email to doug@profile-financial.com. It's your money for your future, so join Doug every week to build your wealth on the Goldstein on Gelt Show.